Canada. Land of maple syrup, snowstorms in April, and political leaders who either talk too fast or too slow. Welcome back, my dear peasants, to another episode of the Krabby Tabby Report, the only place where politics meets feline sarcasm, and common sense is still alive. Barely. Today we're pitting two of Canada's most famous political gladiators against each other. Pierre Freedom Poilievre versus Mark, the banker. One wants to rage against the machine. The other wants to balance the budget so hard you could set your watch to it. Who will emerge victorious? More importantly, who will drive me to drink first? Spoiler alert. Probably both. Before we dive into the glorious mess of Canadian politics, let's get some housekeeping out of the way. You know the drill, folks. Like this video, subscribe, and smash that notification bell like Pierre smashes gatekeepers, or like I smack my human's hand when she dares to move me off the warm laptop keyboard. Go on, I'll wait. All right, let's get into it. Grab your snacks, pour a stiff Canadian drink, or a saucer of cream, I don't judge, and let's claw through this debate, one political blunder at a time. The Furball Files, Mark Carney versus Pierre Poilievre, a claw-to-claw showdown by Precious McFluffy-Butt, a.k.a. the Krabby Tabby Reporter. Ah, Canada, land of maple syrup, healthcare, and the occasional existential crisis over whether we're a country or just America's polite upstairs neighbor. And now we find ourselves in yet another political dust-up, a battle of ideology, personality, and, frankly, a test of how much nonsense Canadians are willing to put up with. On one side, we have Pierre Poilievre, the conservative leader who speaks in rapid-fire sound bites and seems to believe that freedom is both a political platform and a cure-all for the nation's woes. On the other side, lurking in the shadows of liberal politics, is Mark Carney, the former central banker who may or may not be Canada's next Trudeau replacement, and the only man in politics who can make economics sound like a bedtime story. Round 1. Who are these guys? Pierre Poilievre, the speed-talking libertarian, with a chip on his shoulder. Pierre Poilievre was born in Calgary, Alberta, and adopted into a family of teachers, a fact he likes to bring up to remind you that, yes, he worked his way up from humble beginnings. But don't let that fool you. Pierre wasn't exactly hauling fish off the docks in Newfoundland. He was winning Reform Party essay contests and selling political memberships by the age of 16. Fast forward to today, and Pierre is the leader of the Conservative Party, railing against everything from taxes to gatekeepers, which I assume includes anyone who's ever told him no. He's got that fast-talking, angry suburban dad energy, the guy who would demand to speak to the manager at Home Depot because the self-checkout line is too long. His strategy? Simple. Rage against everything. Inflation? Trudeau's fault. Housing crisis? Also Trudeau's fault. Your milk costs too much? That would be Trudeau and the Bank of Canada, conveniently led by someone named Mark Carney. Mark Carney, the economist who could probably sell you a retirement plan in his sleep. Mark Carney, on the other paw, is the calm, well-mannered banker who has spent his entire career being the guy that rich people call when they screw up the economy. Born in the Northwest Territories. Yes, the part of Canada most people forget exists. He was raised in Edmonton before heading off to Harvard and Oxford to study economics. Carney's claim to fame? Being the governor of not one, but two central banks. First Canada's, where he helped us dodge the worst of the 2008 financial crash, and then the Bank of England, where he kept Britain from setting itself on fire before Brexit did that anyway. Unlike Pierre, who thrives on outrage, Mark Carney is a walking spreadsheet in a suit with the ability to make even the most terrifying economic collapse sound like a minor inconvenience. His speeches sound less like fiery political sermons and more like a kindly uncle explaining compound interest at Thanksgiving dinner. Round 2. What do they actually believe? Poilievre, the freedom candidate. Pierre's entire political brand can be boiled down to one word: freedom. No, seriously, that's basically it. He wants to slash taxes, cut regulations, and basically tell the government to mind its own business. He loathes the carbon tax, calling it a scam. Which, to be fair, many Canadians agree with every time they fill up their car. He thinks central bankers are the enemy, blaming them for inflation rather than, global supply chain issues and corporate greed. His vibe is very middle-class guy who's had enough, despite having been in politics since he was 25 and never actually working a non-political job. Carney, the let's be rational technocrat. Carney, by contrast, is the exact opposite. His ideology isn't driven by angry soundbites. It's backed by math, statistics, and probably a well-organized Excel spreadsheet. He supports climate policies, particularly in banking, where he wants corporations to take responsibility for environmental damage. He believes in strong social safety nets, backing programs that keep Canadians from spiraling into poverty. He's a deficit hawk, but not obsessed with slashing government spending, meaning he'd rather balance the books intelligently rather than just cutting everything in sight. Where Poilievre is an attack dog, Carney is a chess player, thinking long-term and always looking calm, even when everything is on fire. Round 3. Who would actually run Canada better? Ah, the million-dollar question. Or, given inflation, the billion-dollar one. If you're a hard-right, small government, anti-tax Canadian, Poilievre is your guy. He hates bureaucracy, wants to cut red tape, and promises, a word I use with extreme skepticism, to lower the cost of living by getting the government out of the way. If you believe that personal freedom and the free market will solve Canada's problems, Pierre's energy will appeal to you. If you prefer a measured economic expert, Carney is your pick. He actually understands global markets, inflation, and fiscal policy, and would likely take a rational, slow and steady approach to economic issues. If you want a competent, intelligent leader who won't burn the house down out of spite, but will probably put you to sleep with his economic rhetoric, Carney is probably safer. Round 4. Who would win in a catfight? All right, let's be real. If these two ever went paw to paw, who would emerge victorious? Pierre Poilievre would come in swinging, hissing, and clawing at everything in sight. He'd be loud, relentless, and determined to win on sheer force of will. Mark Carney wouldn't engage in the fight. He'd calculate the odds, plan 3 steps ahead, and convince Pierre that fighting is bad for long-term economic stability. And somehow, Pierre would end up clawing himself. So, if this were a battle of brute force, Poilievre wins. If it's a battle of intellect, Carney takes it paws down. Final verdict. Who should lead Canada? That, dear viewers, depends on what kind of cat you are. If you're a scrappy alley cat who believes in fighting for survival, free will, and overthrowing the establishment, Poilievre is your guy. If you're a well-fed house cat who prefers stability, long-term planning, and economic expertise, Carney is the smarter pick. But no matter who wins, one thing is for certain. I, Precious McFluffy-Butt, Supreme Overlord of the Feline Economy, shall remain the true leader of Canada, lounging in the sunbeam of taxpayer-funded entitlement and watching my peasants scream at each other over politics. Now, bring me my treats and a nap, peasant. Crabby-tabby out. Well, there you have it, my dear. Overly opinionated humans. Canada's finest in a political catfight for the ages? Will it be Poilievre, the rage-fueled wrecking ball of government overreach? Or Carney, the spreadsheet-wielding banker wizard who wants to run the country like a well-balanced checkbook? Only time, polls, and possibly an economic recession will tell. Meanwhile, I'll be here, lounging, judging, and keeping my finely tuned whiskers on the latest nonsense coming out of Ottawa. If you enjoyed this delightful dive into the chaos that is Canadian politics, do your civic duty, like the video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell like it just suggested raising your taxes. Trust me, it makes all the difference, and it keeps me well stocked in premium Canadian catnip. Until next time, sharpen those claws and stock up on Canadian booze and catnip. You are going to need it.